Hi, welcome to Susmita's Voice. Today's story is A Triumph of Surgery. Summary in a nutshell. When we love someone, we do it unconditionally, and sometimes our love is so pure that we think our love can never be harmful. But too much of everything is harmful. When our love overflows, we somewhere end up being harmful to our loved ones. In this story, the love of Mrs. Pumphrey has made Tricky a bloat of a sausage, but our narrator, Mr. Harriet, is very practical and triumphs in a surgery. But did he operate someone? Or did anyone go to the hospital? Is what we will unveil in this story. About the author. A British veterinary, surgeon, and writer, James Alfred White, who was well known by his pen name James Harriet, has written this interesting piece. He used his innumerable experiences as a surgeon to write a series of stories about the type of animals he would tend to and the diverse types of owners. Here in this story as well, we come across a pet and the amazingly different type of an owner he has. The author takes us through how the dog is treated very well by the owner, but that has become the main poison for it. We will also see how the author smartly tends the dog and also doesn't hurt anyone. The plot of the story. The story begins at a point when Mrs. Pumphrey, a rich lady, takes her dog out for a walk. The duo is spotted by a veterinary doctor and is shocked to see the condition of the dog. He makes a comment saying that the dog looked like a bloated sausage with a leg at each end. The author advises the owner to stop by his place someday for a healthy checkup for the pet. He advises her to stop giving him unhealthy things to eat, but Mrs. Pumphrey is not able to refuse Tricky, and he is the dearest thing to her. But soon he falls sick and the doctor is summoned. The narrator, Mr. Harriet, then somehow takes Tricky, the dog, to the hospital, even though he knew that Mrs. Pumphrey would never be ready to leave her dog, and she had nearly fainted just by hearing those words. Then he took the dog along and put a bed for him in his surgery. The dog didn't move much, neither ate anything for the first 2 days. On the second day, he looked around and whimpered a bit. He wanted to go out on the third, and then he started playing with the bigger dogs when he was taken out. The dog also began to lick the paws of other dogs clean on the third day. Then slowly his condition started improving, but the latter development was very fast. He started to fight for his meals with other dogs. Then, when this news had reached Mrs. Pumphrey, she started sending him eggs, as she thought that Tricky was recovering from an illness and needed energy foods. Mr. Harriet and his partners were smart enough, and they started eating those eggs for morning breakfast for their own. Then, for improving Tricky's blood, Mrs. Pumphrey started sending in bottles of wine, and which was again consumed by Mr. Harriet. He used to take 2 glasses before lunch and some more glasses while having his lunch. Then, when she started sending in bottles of brandy for Tricky, that was the time when Mr. Harriet thought that he would really like to keep Tricky as a permanent guest in the surgery. Mr. Harriet used to be really happy some days to have 2 extra eggs every morning, then having few glasses of wine in the afternoon, and finally closing the day by having brandy at night was a beautiful routine. But then he took a wise decision and called up Mrs. Pumphrey, as she was really worried, and on this side Tricky was ready to be taken back home. Tricky was really happy to see his mistress and jumped into the car as soon as it had arrived. Mrs. Pumphrey said that she won't be able to ever thank Mr. Harriet for what he has done, and also that his surgery had been successful as Tricky was now cured. The theme of the story. We all know too much of anything is poisonous, and this is not exclusive for some cases. Rather, it is a very common proverb. Same goes with love and care. We always love and take care of our near and dear ones. But how much are we really aware of the amount of love that is needed for the person? The theme of the story also revolves around this particular theme, that the blind love we sometimes possess for the one whom we love most, we might end up hurting the healthy needs of the person and sometimes affect the person's growth. The justification of the title. The entire story revolves around how Tricky was spotted to be ill by the veterinary and the ways how he reaches the surgery, and then how he finally recovers on his own as well. The story has a very justified title because of the fun that is used in the title. Very few people know and register the difference that there is a homophone used where surgery means both a medical condition of treatment and a place where a number of dogs are kept together to grow and heal. Here, the fantastic part is also revealed from the name itself. The character sketch. There are two main characters in the story, Mrs. Pumphrey and Mr. Harriet. Mrs. Pumphrey is a typical rich woman who has a dog and finds him to be her entire life. Her life surrounds him and his needs. She is so attached to the Tricky that for her the dog is no less than any human being. She provided the dog with all the needs and requirements whether the dog needed them or not. She is so worried about leaving the dog that she had come to leave it in the most familiar car. She was more worried that Tricky won't be able to live without her than the amount the dog was worried. She did not make Tricky go and do any work and provided him with all kinds of foods that weren't even needed for him. Her character is a very genuine character, and that anyone who reads about her will be able to draw a naturally found person like her. Mr. Harriet is a very realistic, practical, and smart person. He knows that he is needed for whom and at what amount. He is very good at what he does and he understands his patients very well. Here in this story, he has been acting as a person who is not just sensitive towards the needs of an unhealthy situation, rather, he is also ready to take up the challenge and win finally. He knows very well how to tackle someone. He knows until what extent he can make someone take the challenge and also win in it. In this story, he has proven himself to be very intelligent and where he uses the homophone words of surgery. And now he kept on accepting Mrs. Pumphrey's gifts for Tricky and he himself kept on utilizing them according to his needs and will. His character is a very smart and understanding character. The blogger's opinion. After reading this section, what do you think should be one's attitude towards whom they love? When we love someone dearly, we need to be aware of few ground rules. Can you reveal some rules that you think should be abided by? As a doctor, do you think what Mr. Harriet did was justifiable? Justify yourself. Please comment with your thoughts in the comment section below.